The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
I think this might be our first game that has, I'm really proud of this, user evolvable difficulty. Right?
Go on.
Right? Because you choose how your character evolves. And so you can make the game harder by sucking more, right? Just like in Zelda, you don't get the hearts, and so the game's harder. You don't get the Master Sword, and the game's harder. In this game, you can just choose not to evolve.
Well, so that's true. It's interesting because I've always phrased that, I think, as user-defined difficulty.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But but it was interesting because I always say, like, the more you play the game, the easier you can make it. But you're like, no, if you suck really hard, then you can make it really hard. And it's like,
the point is that
glass
it's a
half
choice,
empty way to.
right?
Yes, it is a choice, but like I approach it as like it's a choice to make the glass half full, and you're like, it's a choice to pour away half the glass.
It's a choice to throw the glass out the window.
Yeah. Now nobody has any water. What do you think about that, Steve?
Damn it, Steve. So what game did you weirdly come out of left field and pick for us?
E.V.O. Search for Eden.
Okay, now before we go any farther, E.V.O. or E.V.O. Because there are dots.
I mean, I have I don't have a CAC card. I have a cat card. So
Okay.
yeah, E.V.O.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
So E.V.O. Search for Eden.
It's not the Strategic Homeland Initiative. It's SHIELD. You know.
That's fair.
But yes, E.V.O. Search for Eden. Yeah. Go do the thing where you say stuff.
Yeah, so this game came out in actually very close to this time of year in 1993 for the Super Nintendo. And it's from Enix, which, if you're a lifetime JRPG fan like I am, seeing Enix on a box is like, oh, Enix, right? Because now they've been gobbled up by Square, so it's Square Enix, right? But like, this is the company of Dragon Quest, right? So like the big pedigree, right?
They also made the new Marvel Adventures video game.
Yes. So Square has what I assume is a department run by like someone's niece or nephew, and they're like super into comics and anime because they also made the Full Metal Alchemist games.
Yeah.
Right? On like the PlayStation 2, I think, which is just like just someone at Square just somehow like occasionally gets budget together and is like, I'm going to make this nerd thing a reality, which I super love. I love that they allow that to happen, but it is odd.
Now, the reason why I bring it up is because, we were playing this. And I was like, oh, Enix, this will be interesting. At a minimum, if it's an Enix game, it's going to be interesting, right? And then I sat down and I was like, oh, man, I was like, the new Marvels game was on PlayStation Plus for cheap, so I was like, I was interested in this. I'll give it a whirl. And then I booted up and it's like, Square Enix. I'm like, well, apparently I'm on a kick. So
I have a type. So here's my summary of this game, because this is a weird game.
A weird game.
God has decided that you're the best and has given you personally access to billions of years worth of evolution at your discretion. And you use this bizarre favoritism to power up and reach Eden in this kind of platformer action RPG thing.
Yep, that's accurate. Yeah, it is as weird because it is a action platformer. But it does have a lot of RPG mechanics. All of this we'll get into. But to me, it had a very similar feel to ActRaiser in the sense that, like, the action, the platforming is like part of it.
Yeah. The platforming, what most people would describe as the main mechanic, is like an also ran.
Yeah, it's like this is also part of it. Yeah, so it is closer, I believe, in pedigree to ActRaiser than to Mario.
Oh yes, yeah. No, if you, dear listener, have played both of those games, that is a critical way to describe what the platforming in this is like. So, but what is your nostalgia experience?
Super none. I've never played this game before.
Okay.
but this was one. So Google loves knowing everything about my life, and I don't care to stop it. So, so it just recommends a lot of times. It says, articles that people have written on, 7 games that still hold up, and 7, like whatever. And so this was in one of the articles where I was like, oh, it's a game about evolution, and I think evolution's cool. It's an RPG, but it doesn't seem like one where because a lot of times with RPGs, if you don't throw 20 hours at it, you're just not going to get it. So it seemed, I was like, this seems like an approachable game that does some like weird, interesting stuff, and I want to give this a shot.
That's fair. Now for my dollar, I actually did play this as a kid and completely forgot about it because you hit me in chat and you were like, oh, hey, what about this game? And I was like, what? And then I looked up screenshots of it and I was like, oh my God, I did play this game. I absolutely played this game. And I don't really remember anything about it except that you evolve as your way of getting stronger. So I sure hope that's enough to color my experience, right? Because I think only a handful of times, not counting nostalgia games, obviously, but I think only a handful of times we've played a game that neither of us have played. We try generally to say, like, this is a game at least one of us has played, if not both of us. And it does bring me a little bit of like getting old relief when I'm like, oh man, there's so many new games I want to play and I haven't played any of them and I probably never will. And then you throw out some like bizarre ass JRPG from the 90s and I'm just like, oh, but I did play that one. So it's not that I care about games any less. It's just like I'm old now and I don't have time to look up every weird evolution based RPG and give it a spin.
Well, and also, too, I think there's something to be said that the sheer volume of games is exponentially larger. I mean, like when we were kids, it was very much more akin to, like back in the 70s, there were 3 movies at the movie theater. So, like if you liked going to see movies, chances are you could see every movie that came out, you could just see them all, now. And it was similar when we were younger in the sense that, no, you probably couldn't play every Nintendo game, but you could play a lot of them and most of the good ones, that is not true at all anymore. You can't even probably stay on top of games in a genre, like if you're like, I love FPSs and it's like, okay, have you played all of the FPSs that have come out this year? No. Have you played all the good FPSs that came out this year? No. I played like 3.
Yeah. Well, and that's even if you're just willing to draw arbitrary boundaries around like restricted even just to a console. Because if you have a PC and you're willing to open up your heart to itch where people release like console quality games for free on the reg, it's like you could never ever hope to see even an appreciable percentage of the good ones in a specific genre, let alone have like a broad, Renaissance man style exposure.
Which is great, I think, because, I mean, I think it just goes to show how much lower the cost of entry is to, I mean, like, you can play somebody's college thesis video game. Like, they're like, hey, I went to school to make video games, and here's what I did for my final, It's pretty broken, but I don't know, does some fun things.
Dude, one of our all-time favorite games, Celeste, started as a Flash game.
Yeah, and now they have that Flash game in the game.
True. The game of Celeste exists within the Celeste universe, which means are we in the Celeste universe?
I would like to think so.
Me too.
Time to shill?
It is always time to shill, but this is the time in the episode that we specifically shill.
I don't know, man. If it was always time to shill, you'd be give me $5.
No, you give me $5.
Oh no.
So yeah, if you like what we're doing, continue to listen to us do it. Also, subscribe so that you don't miss any of us doing more of this. If you want to help us out, you can do things like leave ratings and reviews. I think word of mouth reviews are always the best. So if you go and tell a friend, I think that's way cooler than leaving a rating or review. But you could do both, you lazy ass. You can also find us on the internets. We're both on Twitter. There's also the Nostalgia Goggles account. I stream all of the games that I can that we play for the podcast. So you can find me on Twitch. All these links are in the show notes. And if you really want to go above and beyond, you can support us on the Patreon. Depending on the level you support us at, you might get something like stickers or a shout out on the show, but everybody gets the after show. So that's just more stuff for like.
And if you donate $1,000, you get to fight us in one-on-one combat.
Yes.
Yep. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No weapons.
Yeah. No weapons.
Yeah. Hand to hand. It has to be agreed upon. There has to be a doctor present, like Hamilton style. We'll pay him in advance. We'll treat him with civility, but we'll have him turn around so he can have deniability.
Yeah, but for a cool G, yeah.
I'd find somebody for that.
We did not prepare that beforehand.
Nope. And now I'm like a little nervous because this is going to be out on the internet. And there's weirdos with money.
but then they could be weirdos where we have their money.
Yeah, I suppose there is a future where this turns out okay. So some people did give us enough on the Patreons to be at one of those cool upper tier levels. So we need to thank first our 8-bit classics, Jacob.
An adorable adenine amino acid.
Yarno.
A garish guanine amino acid.
Jason.
A thinking thymine amino acid.
John.
A careless cytosine amino acid.
And Kevin.
A strand of deoxyribonucleic acid.
And our 16-bit hero, Michael.
A zygote. You see how I'm slowly building up a zygote?
No, this is good. And our full 3D supporter, David.
A full-blown extinction event. Oh, no, that one didn't build.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, I screwed it up.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about, the audio visuals first, maybe?
Yeah, we should probably do that. I don't know. Okay, I'm just going to throw this out there. It's just off the cuff throwaway note. I don't know where to put this, so I put it here. Translation's not great, man.
No, it's not. And I think that's reasonable in audiovisual or in gameplay, because if you were just watching somebody else play this game, it would be impossible not to see that the translation is not great. The good news is, in terms of gameplay, it generally doesn't have like any game-breaking impacts. It's just like, that's a weird way to structure that sentence, or that's not where that word should go, or
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that to me, to your point, right, is it doesn't really break the game at all. It's slightly detracting in the sense that, I booted this thing up and I was like, yeah, man, I'm interested to play this like weird game. I'm going to evolve and like get stronger through evolution. And then after reading the game's explanation, I'm like, I don't think I get it anymore. Like I understood after the game explained it to me, I understood less. And then I started playing and I was like, oh no, I got it, So the translation is so bad that it is more hindrance than helpful, but it's not necessary. Like you could just not read any of it and and get by. But yeah, it is a product of its era for localization.
Yeah, I think especially for a certain kind of game, because a game like this, by the standards of the day, had a lot of text, right? And so you got to pay somebody to translate it, and video games were still coming out of their slump. So it's unfortunately a product of its time, but I do think it's minor enough to be like quirky, not full on experience ruining, which is right. If you gotta have a suboptimal translation, that's about where you want to stop on that scale.
Yes, agreed. Outside of that, though, one of the visuals I think is absolutely worth mentioning in the audiovisual section is the upgrades, which is one of the main thrusts of this game. I think that all of the character model was very lovingly crafted for all of its stuff, so like all of the upgrades, all of the just the way that it's painted and animated, I thought was top notch,
Yeah, and there's like just an absolute buttload of combinations, right? Because you have, and it changes a little bit, but depending on like what you are, sometimes certain evolutions are not available to you, but you have jaws, horns, neck, body, back of the head, hands and feet, tail, and dorsal fin. Mm-hmm. Right. And so depending on what you currently are, some of those like hands and feet aren't available to you until like way toward the end when you're a human. Most of the other ones are available to you when you're an animal, right? So like I
thought hands and feet were available to you earlier. I think because that threw me, but it was like your fins in the earlier levels.
Oh,
I'll double check that one.
You might be right. The point is, most of them are available to you all the time, which means there are a buttload of combinations all the time.
Yes.
Even restricting some of them it's still a gigantic list. So you can end up with some really stupid looking animals. You can end up with some really badass looking, like almost kind of Digimon, Pokemon kind of monsters. And then you can also just be a boring ass, like regular, normal looking animal, which sucks and you're lame if you do that.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that, and to me, and this is something I mentioned in a couple places, but I think that one of the core aesthetics to this game is exploration. But less so exploring the mechanics, because the mechanics are pretty simple, and we'll get into that. And not really so much exploring the different levels, because they're all very samey looking. It's exploring the character models, because, you know, you're like, I'm going to keep, you know, farming this meat, you know, because I want to know what that evolution, like, ooh, what does this one look like? Ooh, what does the best dorsal fin look like? Ooh, what happens if I give myself a hard shell? That doesn't make any sense. I'm a fish. Oh, wow, cool. It gives me this weird armor plating. It makes me change color. That was kind of neat, you know? And so it, and, well, that's a mechanics note of the spacing of how long to evolution. But I do think that the fact that at no point did I pick an evolution and was like, well, that's boring. That's not worth my time, you know? Like,
yeah, it was either
minimum,
like, oh, that was cool, or oh my god, I look ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. It was something. There was never one where I was just kind of like, well, why did where, you know, like in modern games where you buy like a $10 whatever pack of skins or something, and you're like, well, this stinks. I didn't get that. I didn't get that feeling once, and there is no DLC in this game.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I got to the end of chapter 4. There's 5 chapters in the game. So by the end of chapter 4, you have gone through a bunch of the mammalian evolutions. And at one point, I had a rabbit's body and a cat's head, but then moose antlers. And it was uncomfortable.
So you were almost a jackalope?
A jackalope, yeah.
Yeah. A jackalope,
yeah. And then because of the things I was trying to optimize for, I made my neck longer, which made me look considerably more uncomfortable, right? But it at no point was it like, oh, I don't see what changed, right? They really poured all of their attention into the player's character sprite, which I think, I mean, given the nature of the game, was absolutely the right thing to do. The contrast is, the enemies are super samey. There's sometimes just the one enemy type in fact, I would say most of the time there's just the one enemy type on a given screen. And so you just fight that one enemy over and over and over and over and over. And over the course of the entire game, I would say there's a pretty big variety of enemies, but I mean, they are dwarfed by the variety you have just in the first level.
Yeah, you know, I agreed 100%. And I actually wonder if you did all of the combinations of things you can evolve to, that probably way outstrips the total number of enemy sprites.
It would have to. It would absolutely have to. Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting, because if they wanted to get lazy, they could have just made the different possible combinations of you the enemies, you know? But
that's true.
But I think, though, that would have been the wrong call, because, again, part of the game is the exploration and the excitement of, like, what's the next thing going to look like? So if you had seen it on a bad guy before, you'd be like, oh, yeah, no, I saw that. Okay. You know, it wouldn't be as exciting to see the new hotness, you know?
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought, because when you consider, like, what the spirit of the game is, they didn't all the monsters you fight, with a couple of exceptions, but like all the monsters that you fight are real creatures that have existed either in fact or like we believe or believed at the time. Like, we now know dinosaurs didn't really look quite the way we used to imagine them in the 90s, but like, you know what I mean? Like, within reason, these are all, you know, realistic creatures. Even like the giant insects, because there did used to be giant insects and now they're gone, thank God.
Isn't that terrifying?
Yes, it is. But I think even though it would make sense to say, well, yeah, there's enemies that have similar evolutions to you, it's just that there weren't a lot of them, or they didn't survive very long. And so you'll see some fantastical ones. I think you're right. I think that would be dumber from like a gameplay enjoyment perspective. Like, no, I get to have the weird, dragon body with wings and giant Tyrannosaurus Rex teeth. Like, that's a thing I get to do. You don't get to do
me.
that.
Yeah. Like it's my thing. You got no right using it. And I think that ultimately it would be, I'm just imagining the way I would feel if I, spent 400 EVO points or whatever on like a new thing, and it was the exact same thing I had seen a bunch of enemies have. I'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh, I got the new like antenna dealie. Oh, that's pretty cool looking. Oh, especially because most of the stuff, to your point, like most of the stuff that you get is not stuff that enemies have, but it is stuff that real life things have.
Yes. Yeah, there's nothing in here that I think is completely alien.
Right. So, you're like, oh, cool. When you said this thing, what you really meant was rhinoceros hide. Oh, man, that's pretty cool. I got like the hide of a rhinoceros and the head of a dragon, and I have the head of a rabbit and the body of a rabbit. No, I did not make an Esquilax.
The one other thing I want to make sure I mention about the visuals is they're like super cartoony, right? And I don't mean, oh, it's a SNES era game. Like, they used some traditional like Looney Tunes style animation things. When you are charging, you make this like super furrowed brow, like your eye gets like big and angled like a kid drawing angry eyes. And yeah, you kind of like grit your teeth if you have teeth, or you like clench your jaw if you just have like a beak or something. When you crash into like a wall, or if you're swimming or flying, the ground or the ceiling, you make a cartoony like boyoing sound, and like your body scrunches up, and you get the kind of anime like eye, the white eye with the teardrop. And some of the enemies have like really over the top like knockback animations when you hit them, like really anthropomorphized faces, right? They're very like Looney Tunes, like Land Before Time kind of faces, which I don't think is good or bad. Like, it's an artistic choice, but I just kept noticing like this game takes itself so seriously. I think, right? Like, I think this game takes itself really seriously, but maybe it doesn't, because the visuals do not communicate seriousness. They're kind of it's almost like a lesson you would teach a kid, right? Like, oh, hey, here's kind of how evolution worked, and it's really more important that you get the concept than that you like learn specific facts. So the animals can look cartoony and silly because we're not going for hyper realism, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that from my seat, I think that this was probably the right choice, because if you consider who they're marketing it to, which is probably younger children, right? This type of subject matter can get super dark super fast, right? I mean, most notably, I've watched a fair amount of Octonauts. You watch Octonauts? Octonauts on in your house?
Don't know that one.
Oh, it's just it's C-Lab 2021, but for kids and not ridiculous, and they're all animals, right?
So it's C-Lab 2020, which was
no,
for kids.
I don't think so. I'm not familiar with that. Actually, and there's one person on there who's the cat character named Quasi, and I have said to Megan a number of times, like, he needs to get fired. He is worthless. All he does is say like random, like, when I was a pirate, here's some vague, terrible, horrible thing that we believed in that is completely untrue and based off of myth. And I'm like, he is regularly exacerbates problems. Like, he needs to get canned. So anyways, that's not the point. The point is that in that show, there's a lot of times when, they're like, oh no, these baby seals were going to get eaten by this polar bear, but we stopped them by like saving them and doing this and all this sort of stuff. And I'm just like watching it. I'm like, that polar bear's dead.
Yeah. Yeah. One side had to win, and you picked the baby seals,
which is fine. Like, I get that. I can empathize with that. But I mean, So the same thing with Evolution is I don't think if they said like, hey, let's make it a little cartoony, even, when you kill a thing, right? It just turns into a cartoon meat thing.
The giant Flintstone meat around a huge central bone. Yes, I absolutely everything. No matter what you kill, they turn into that meat.
Which is, at some point, we as a species have decided that that's what meat looks like, and that's how we're going to represent it. And I think we're all just kind of okay with it. In fact, I watched The Lion King recently. When Scar dangles a piece of zebra over them, it's basically that, but zebra hide skinned. And I was like, all right, whatever. Anyways, I say all that to say that if they hadn't made it cartoony, they would have had to make it more realistic, and that would have gotten dark. So I think that they made the right choice.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And whether or not they did it because they felt like they had to, like, we won't get approved and they won't put us on the Super Nintendo. I don't know about all that, but I think just aesthetically, you're right. It's the right choice.
Yeah, I think that it was less so like, oh no, if we go too dark, then we're going to get. It was probably more so we don't have, even if we wanted to go dark, which we don't particularly want to, we can't accurately really represent that, so cartoony. Gameplay?
I have one last general thing about that you could pick up just watching somebody else play this game. This game does not have enough music. It just doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
There's not enough music. Sound effects are fine. They get super repetitive for reasons we will get into shortly. But this game just does not have enough music. It's not bad music. There just isn't enough of it. And it is exacerbated by the fact that the loops, like the actual little phrases that are repeated, are also too short, right? So if you are playing this game or you're just in the room where someone is playing this game, you will start to feel like are you just on pause and it's just playing the same like 5 seconds of music? Because I mean, I'm not exaggerating, like 5 to 10 seconds on a loop forever, right? And so, the different chapters have some different music, but not all of it. Some of it carries out throughout the entire game, right? Like, it's just, I don't know, man. Like, a lot of Enix games, I think, have like pretty spectacular music. So the fact that I found myself going like, was like disappointing, I guess. It's like as if I could do any better, but like it's just frustrating that I kind of went in, I guess, with high expectations for the music, and it was like, this is passable to okay, but it's not good, and I was expecting great, so I'm coming in like way under.
Well, it's just kind of, if you go in to a Star Wars movie and it's like, you say what you want, but then the music isn't done by John Williams, you'd be like, why did I come to this?
Yeah.
What are
we even doing here? I don't care if Jar Jar Binks is on the screen as long as Duel of the Fates is playing over it.
Now, and I'm sure this exists, but now I just want to go back and like find just not bad music, but kind of elevator, like lackluster music, and just put that over the beautiful John Williams score, So it's like, do 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 do. It's like Darth Maul like pulls out his lightsaber,
the one of my all-time favorite videos, maybe the greatest single video on the internet, the Jurassic Park.
Titanic?
No.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Jurassic Park melodica cover. Somebody's surely done that for Star Wars, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You would hope, right? I mean, because it just welcome to Jurassic Park, and this is completely tangential. Then we'll get to gameplay. I saw an amazing thing the other day where somebody said, necromancers always revive, corpses, right? Like it's always humans and zombies, but like dinosaurs are an option. And then the person said, we have an entire movie explaining why this is a bad idea. And then it's like, are you suggesting that John Hammond was a necromancer? And it just shows him with like his cane that has the, bug in the top. And he goes like most necromancers, John Hammond drew his power from an arcane staff. I was like, man, all of it holds up.
Yeah, no notes.
Gameplay. Hitbox sucks, man.
So bad. It sucks so bad.
Such trash. It is. I really think that the reason why you have so many hit points and there's so many health drops is because the hitbox is so crappy. Because I got stuck, and the problem is when it registers a hit is like hit and miss. Sometimes I would go up to a bad guy and be like, I'm going to chomp on this bad guy. And I'd hit him or he'd hit me, whatever. But sometimes I'd go to hit him and he would wreck me, or just be like hit. And I was like, oh God, stop it, just stop. And I'd run away and go find some health things. But the health items respawn pretty quickly. So it never really became game breaking to the point where I was like, and I'm dead now. Thanks for that. So
I had this much later in my notes, but since we're talking about it, I have a note here called Stunlock the Game. And I realized playing this game, because I'm not big on retreating in certain kinds of video games, right? Like if you're playing Doom 2016, if you're playing Borderlands, right? If you're playing like a cover-based shooter, like the Uncharted games or something, like you have to, like, retreating is part of the expected path to victory, right? Like you go up, you bang, oh crap, I missed that guy and he got me, so I gotta like retreat and recover my health or find some more ammo or whatever. Like that, and
the retreat cycle is pretty short,
Yes.
Like you retreat for a few seconds and then you're back in it.
Yeah, but in certain kind of games, especially like platformers, the expectation is you kind of like plow forward, right? This game will let you do that if you like really can nail the timing, but if you can't, you will super-duper die, because every enemy, no matter how slow they move, if you overlap their sprite too much, sorry buddy, you are now stunlocked. You have like 0 invincibility frames. I think literally 0 invincibility frames. So like when you take a hit, before you can do inputs into the controller again, you can get hit again. And I realized that stunlocking enemies and stunlocking bosses feels really good because it's cheesy as hell. Being stunlocked sucks, right? And when it's like your friend, you can reach, you're playing Mortal Kombat 2 and he keeps hitting you with like the scorpion spear and then uppercutting you, like you can reach across and uppercut your friend to make him stop doing that. But you can't uppercut the computer. You should. You absolutely should. But you can't uppercut the computer, right? So if the computer is stunlocking you, it's just it. That's just a feature of the game you have to learn to play around. And I did eventually, but like through a lot of frustration, because the game is not enjoying the game. So the only person in this relationship that is expected to enjoy the game is me, which means the game should not be able to do things that harsh my enjoyment mechanically. And being stunlocked is a thing that should only go one way, human to game. Humans can stunlock the game. The game should not be able to stunlock the human.
Yeah, that's super fleshist.
I don't care.
I don't care. Fine, I'm a fleshist. Just showing off your flesh privilege. That did not sound right at all.
Super
Anyways.
didn't. Yeah. And I edit the show, so you like this is how I extract the $5 from you. You want me to cut that out? $5.
now I kind of do just so that way it immediately smash cuts to, you want me to cut that out? $5. What did he cut?
Oh my Lord.
No, I made my decisions. Anyways, I agree 100% in the fact that stunlocking should only go one way. Is it so? I think the thing that really hits that is frustrating about stunlocking, and we've kind of discussed this briefly in other games, is how many bad decisions or mistakes am I allowed to make, right, before it's a game over, right? And so games set that expectation all of the time, right? So you can have a game like Mario where generally you can make 1 to 2 mistakes or just one mistake if you fall down a pit, right? So if you're small Mario, you can make one mistake and you're dead, right? Or you can fall down a pit and die, Celeste is very similar in the sense that you can make very few mistakes, right? But the game, if the game sets the expectation of, I got 80 hit points and I have buffed myself out, so these things are dealing 1 hit point, I can make 80 mistakes. Except I didn't. I made one mistake, and then it stunlocked me, and then slowly made me relive that mistake over and over again for 12 seconds. And worse, because you remember the last thing out of Pandora's box, right?
It's hope.
hope. And that is the worst part of the stun lock, is the hope that it will end, you know? So you're sitting there like maybe if I could just, no, okay, but maybe if I, so basically it puts you in this horrible place of I've made one mistake and I am slowly watching this run evaporate in my hand, but yet I still hold out hope that I can salvage it, and yet you cannot, and it turns to ash in your mouth and is gone. I think that's what sucks about stun locking, just as a general rule.
Yeah, no, that's it. Since we're already on this train, the upside is the cycle time is super fast. Kind of well, I mean, by the standards of the day, it's 5 seconds. And that is kind of like magnified by the fact that the levels themselves are crazy short, like super crazy short. I think there's literally one level in chapter 3 or chapter 4 that has a single enemy in it, and it's non-hostile, so you can just jump over it and then just walk off the other side of the screen. So like, and then that level is considered completed. Like, this is not hyperbole. It is that ridiculous. And that's an extreme case, but many of the levels have either non-hostile enemies or few enough enemies that you can jump over them. At one point you're able to fly, so you can fly over enemies, right? So you have to interact with enemies because of the way the evolution mechanic works, and you kill them and you eat their meat, and that's how you get E.V.O points so that you can evolve. But if you are like, I just need to get from here to there, that is often something you can absolutely do. So if there's a level where you're like, I keep getting stun locked by this enemy because this enemy is super cheap, it's like, just skip it. Just skip this one, I guess.
Don't deal with that one. Agreed. Yeah, the cycle time is super forgiving, and it's forgiving of the failure state as well, because basically, to your point, right, is it kicks you back to the beginning of the level, and I don't even consider that to be loss of cycle time, because you do lose some E.V.O points, but
half.
You don't lose. Yeah, but you don't lose any evolutions.
Correct.
So as long as you don't hoard E.V.O points, right, which is not a great idea in general, to keep a large inventory of E.V.O points. Don't do anything for you. Yeah. It's we all got to get past holding on to those 99 ethers, and just we got to use them sometime, anyways. But that's the thing. So if you're spending your E.V.O points, right, you could lose some E.V.O points, but the fact you get kicked back to the beginning of the level, you're like, well, I mean, I'm still getting the experience from killing these bad guys, so it's not a waste, So yeah, I mean, like the couple of times I died, I just got kicked back. I was like, oh, okay, it's fine, and then just moved on. So I did not feel that the cycle time was punishing at all. One of the interesting things, though, and this may change later on, so let me know. Food drops give you raw HP, right? So it gives you like 1 hit point.
You mean meat? Like when you defeat an enemy?
Yeah, meat.
Okay, because there's stuff in the environment you can eat that gives you no E.V.O points.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, both of them give you like +3 hit points or +2 hit points.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because it doesn't give you a percentage of your HP back. It gives you a raw number back, right? Which means...
Go on.
Which means... say more things. Which means that beefing out your hit points is a little bit less advantageous, right? Because what that does is just increasing your hit points cap, right? So like, let's say that like I've got 80 hit points, right? And every enemy I fight, I get 2 hit points back, but I lose 3 hit points fighting them. I will eventually die, whether I have 25 hit points or 80 hit points, right? Most games give you a percentage of your hit points, because that means that if you have more hit points and you get a percentage back, then you could theoretically get past that threshold of damage to hit points back ratio, basically. So I thought that was an interesting choice.
So the one wrinkle in that I'm confident of is outside of like the boss arena, the environment usually has stuff in it you can eat that doesn't fight back, right? So
correct.
So if you're fighting enemies, like say you have 30 hit points and you get beat down to 20, you can eat from the environment to bring your health back up if the meat you ate from defeating the enemies didn't restore all that you lost during combat. Now, that's just the pure like mathematical truth of it, But in practice, I would not say it is actually that cut and dry, because enemies respawn, and they respawn like Ness Ninja Gaiden style when they are no longer in camera. So walking to the left slightly to eat some food you passed a minute ago while you were fighting an enemy to the right of the screen may actually cause the enemy you already defeated to the left to respawn. So it's not just I will retreat and eat some leafy greens and then charge back into combat. Retreating may actually invite more combat that you thought you had already completed. So I think mathematically you might be able to argue like, well, but they were trying to provide an environment in which you could recover health if you're struggling with combat, but then they don't actually provide the environment in which you can recover health.
Right, because what you've just described is the exact same. It's the same problem but with extra steps, right? Because is that basically if you're saying like, alrighty, well, is it just one more part of the equation? If you say like, for every bad guy, I lose 3 hit points and gain 2 hit points, and after I fight 10 bad guys, I get to a space where I can regain 5 hit points, right? But then if I want to get that food to respawn, which it will, I have to go back through the slugfest of bad guys. So basically, it just adds an additional. It's a plus B. Yeah. On the equation, but it like I said, so it made me think about why most games give you hit points back as a function of the percentage of your max health, as opposed to just like a raw amount. And it does need to be like a deliberate choice. And I think for this one, and for most RPGs in general, you'd want to use a percentage. And for this one, I think it was probably the wrong call, in my opinion.
Yeah, the one wrinkle I will throw in that unfortunately I can offer no additional commentary on is I'm pretty confident that something about your evolution, maybe it's your body or a combination of things, actually changes how much health you recover when you defeat an enemy. Because the last dungeon in the 4th chapter, where you're like up in the sky palace, there's these like eagles, and you have an opportunity to do a lot of evolving, because you like go through this place like a lot because it's laid out like a maze, so you can get lost. And I swear to God, because that was where I made the transition from not on the path to being a human to on the path to being a human. And so it's like, that's when you become an early primate. And I swear to God that after I became a primate, eating those eagles was giving me back more health than it was when I was like a dragon monster. So is that true? I don't know, but I swear that I saw that happen. And then I was like, well, this is even more confusing, because now if you suck at combat, you might choose to optimize into something that regains a lot of health from eating meat, right? Which is like, if that is in fact a mechanic, and I didn't just imagine that is not explained anywhere, is not laid out anywhere that I saw. So it's like, it doesn't change anything you said, but it like further complicates it.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, like saying, oh, well, and again, it would still be a static hit point, but the fact it's like, oh, but you can get more static hit points. It's like, but how? And I mean, and I don't actually have a note on this, but no, actually I do have a note on this. I take that back. So it's just twisted slightly. So if you invest points in body, it will increase your hit points. And if you do this, then and that gets explained to you at the beginning once. And there's just, and then, so the game has a lot going on under the hood, so you can, like you said, evolve 7 different traits, and they all kind of do different stuff, right? It would just be nice to have all of that laid out for me in like a user interface. Go on.
Like in the manual?
No,
not
like
there.
The no, never there.
Okay, dude,
never there.
Dude, so get this, okay? Because I almost always read the manuals for Game Boy games and Nintendo games, right? Atari games, like older games. When it gets to be the Super Nintendo, Genesis, like the 16-bit and beyond era, especially beyond, but in the 16-bit era, it's like kind of hit or miss. It's like, I probably don't need to read the manual. With this, I was like, oh man, there is a lot of information in here. Like, you can evolve these different things for these different amounts. And I guess the amounts are increasing, so the more expensive ones are better, I assume. And then the thing that made me sit back in my chair and go like, oh, God damn it, was I noticed that, let's just say it was like Jaws or whatever. I don't remember what it was, but it's like okay, the first Jaws is 200 EVO P, and then 400, and then 600, and then 1,000, and then 800, and then 200, and then 1,000. And I was like, wait, that means that more expensive does not necessarily equal better. And this is now a problem because the cost of experimenting once the numbers get large enough becomes a massive time sink. So I was like, I am going to look at the manual. And in the manual, they literally provide you with a chart that says, here is the letter score, like A, B, C, D, E, I think, of all of these different things in their like 5 or 6 categories. Now, granted, if you wanted to, you could suss all of that out because there's like a stat screen for your current creature, and it shows you what is my HP, what is my strength, what is my defense, what is my jump, what is my agility, right? It shows you all those stats. So you could evolve something, see how the number changed, notate it, right? But like, I wasn't going to do that, and I couldn't just look it up. But in the manual, it says like, oh, these jaws have B strength, these jaws have A strength. But this is like critical information for playing the game, because depending on your play style, a lot of things that raise one set of stats will actually lower another set of stats. So you have to decide, am I going to hyper optimize in my evolution, or am I going to go for a more balanced thing? And in my experience, hyper optimizing was always the way to go. A balanced creature was never successful for me.
No, and I mean, that kind of holds up because, you know, you got to find your niche, right?
Yeah, but pandas are also hyper optimized, and like, they're not going to make it.
I mean, to be fair, they're just very fortunate because humans have also evolved and we find them super cute. So
that's true. So I guess it's like they say like dogs evolved to have like a more human-like smile because we preferred those dogs, and so we bred more of those dogs, and so now that trait is dominant.
I've forgotten who said it, but it was something to the effect of the number one evolutionary trait you can develop is being useful to humans.
Yes.
Like if you want your species to thrive at this point, it's like if you're useful to humans and how whatever like Roman emperor-esque like passing interest we deign to like, you know, but if you can hit that niche, the humans like me niche, oh man, you set for life. May not be a great life, but you'll be around.
You will be alive. Yes,
you will be alive. But yeah, no. So yeah, you know, and this is where we've hit this philosophical difference a number of times, which is, you know, I am glad that it is in the manual, and so that they did think that through. But I do think that at least some of that information could have been like, I mean, like, even if it didn't tell you, because they do tell you, you know, some things will detract from other things, right? But even if it's just for jaws, which are strength based, if it's like, look, man, this is a strength, and maybe like an asterisk for, you know, it, but it drops your other stats or whatever, you know, just something like that would have been helpful to have in games. So that way, when I'm looking at my evolution, I don't have to pull out a book and be like, okay, wait, what am I doing here?
Well, like the classic Final Fantasies had, I think, actually a really nice way to present this, which is when you're in a shop, at the bottom of the screen, there's all of the characters in your party. And if they can use something, they do their little fanfare cheering animation. And if it's better than what you currently have equipped, there's an up arrow. And if it's worse than what you currently have equipped, there's a down arrow. But of course, things have more than one stat. So you have to decide, like, is raising the primary stat that this thing gives, like, is making my jaws stronger worth the possible downsides of making my jaw stronger? Will I be slower? Will I not be able to jump as high? Right. And so, like, just even knowing that, because it's not linear. It's not that when you go down the list of jaws, the jaws that are lowest on the list are always the strongest. If it was even that, I would say, well, as strength goes up, some other stat can go down, and you have to decide if you want to make that trade-off or not. But it's not even that. Sometimes the strongest ones are like 4th out of 8. And that's just like, you're not helping me like make informed decisions, which is why once I noticed that chart was in the manual, I was like, I'm using this chart. Like, there's no way I'm willing to invest the time to just assume the most expensive thing is always the best, which granted, it typically was, but not always, and not always enough that I would have been super annoyed by it. So I agree with you because the game is a game about making the right numbers be higher, it would be nice if the game was a more active participant in that, right? Like, I'm less anti-manual than you are, but in this in particular, it's like, no, this should really be part of the game.
Well, I mean, I'm anti-manual enough to the point, like, when I play Pokemon, I don't look at the manual to look up what's strong and what's weak against. I try to keep that shit memorized, you know? But again, like, to me, though, that's part of the aesthetic of I'm the Pokemon trainer, so I should remember it, you know? But, like,
because it's not like you literally carry a Pokedex to write stuff down, and Ash doesn't write things down.
I do love in one parody of that where you know, they were like, oh man, we're lost, and you know, Ash pulls out his Pokedex and they're like, oh, is that a map to help us get by? No, this just contains Pokemon information. Could you imagine if we had a small thing that could contain Pokemon information and a map? That'd be crazy. Like the whole Pokedex concept is not aged with smartphones, you know?
It barely aged at the time, man. I had a calculator in high school I could play games on. Like, it's...
Yeah, and it's... I mean, it's just like in Star Trek TNG when they had to show somebody, you know, who's studying really hard. So they have like 7 data pads and they get checked in the hallway and they drop all the data pads. And it's just like, man, what's the storage space on those data pads? It's just got text on it, right? Like, what's wrong with you?
Remind me to tell you another time about the data pad lifestyle, because I actually have a weird anecdote about that.
Excellent. So one of the things, though, that you kind of mentioned about experimenting is definitely for, if you got 2 of them that cost like a cool G of E.V.O points, you know, that is not great to experiment with. But I did feel overall the game does incentivize grinding, because again, like, to me, the core aesthetic is, you know, discover what all crazy things you can make, right? But I found the cycle of how long I had to spend grinding to now I can buy the new hotness to be pretty acceptable, you know?
This is shocking to me.
Really?
Yes. Like, I found the grinding to be incredibly tedious.
Interesting.
Because I wanted to try stuff. I wanted to try different stuff out, but there's a very clear, especially once you're looking at the chart, there's a very clear first order optimal strategy of get enough points to get this thing. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to like try different things, which means you are grinding way more.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, like, for me, and I think that it may have just been, yeah, you know, this type of grinding hits like a weird space for me. So like turn-based grinding, I can't tolerate because
no,
it's too slow, you know, because I'm like, basically I'm just sitting there mashing A. I'm like, yeah, select, attack, got it. Yeah, select, attack, got it. And so all I'm doing is just this with my thumb, like mash. This one required just enough inputs that I kind of enjoyed it, but not so much inputs that I was like stressed out or worried that I was really ever going to fail. So it actually kind of hit that weird space of like, I just kind of zoned out and just did it, you know?
Yeah.
So
I get you. I disagree with you because I streamed this game, so I couldn't do that.
Yeah, and that would be a very and that would be a very different core difference in experience. But yeah, I mean, like the few times I played, I just came downstairs and, you know, just booted the thing up and just kind of swam around, killed some stuff, you know, played for about half an hour, and then I was like, okay, I'm done, you know. I got to see some new things, got to kill some stuff. Okay, you know. The game's not very difficult, so again, I wasn't worried, and the cycle time is not horribly punishing, so I was like, yeah, you know, and if I die, I die. You know.
I'm moved on from being shocked about our difference in kind, and I'm more shocked about like, oh no, does streaming games for nostalgia goggles alter my play experience in a way that's inappropriate? I don't care. I'm not going to stop doing it. But like, yeah, it's just
no. I mean, I think that it's a different type of experience because what it does is it puts you closer into the you're playing video games while you have friends over, or you're playing them at an arcade.
Yeah.
So there have been a number of times where you have gotten a what I would consider to be a closer to real experience because you were playing, Streets of Rage, and somebody was like, "Oh man, you should do thing A," and that would be just like playing it in the arcade.
Dude, it saved Pokemon for me.
Yeah. So, like there's definitely times when you're getting an experience I think is superior, but I definitely think for one where the main thing is just to put your brain in neutral and just slowly do a thing that that there's really no additional input for. Yeah, it probably isn't. This is not a game that you would invite some people over and take turns playing.
No, no, it's not that. So let me ask you about something because I'm not really sure what the transition is to this. So here we go. Do you understand how the green crystals worked?
No, I don't understand how any of the crystals work. I would just eat them indiscriminately, and sometimes they did stuff.
Yeah. So I understood this at first because they explain it to you in the very beginning of the game, but they also like force you to do it right then. So I understood it, and then I kind of spaced out on it and forgot about it until the end of the game. So there's, I think, there's the yellow crystals that give you like tips. It's like little help info boxes. Yeah. And then there's the green crystal. And what the green crystal lets you do is it lets you revert to any of your saved evolutions. So this is where I kind of was scratching my head about like this game. Grinding in this game is a little bit of a chore in my opinion. And yet there are baked in mechanics like the fact that you can save up to 50 of your evolutions where they clearly expect you to try crap out, right? Because if you knew what the optimal evolutions were, you would never have 50. It's probably like one per chapter. It's like, this is the optimal thing for you to be that has all the best stats, right? Or has the stats that are best suited for the enemies that are in this chapter, right? So if you're doing that level of experimentation where they had to dedicate that amount of hardware space to saying like, yeah, we're going to let you save 50 of your evolutions. And then when you eat a green crystal, now when you open the menu, you have an extra option. And it's not that it was grayed out before, it's that it wasn't there. So the whole menu is actually one option longer now. And it says something like review previous evolution or something. And it lets you select from all the ones you've saved. And then for 30 to 60 seconds, you get to be that thing. So if you took your like super pimped out dragon from the dinosaur era and made sure to save that one, because you can save at any time, but you can only recall them with the green crystal. And you then go into say like the mammalian era and then you get a green crystal and then you recall that form, like you suddenly have a very bizarre relationship with the world where you are hyper powerful and you may have abilities you didn't have before, like flight, right? So like I really wish I had better understood that is a thing because one, I don't think you can bank the crystals. And two, I don't think they either don't leave the chapter with you or they don't even leave the stage with you. So if there's, two in every chapter and you eat them all and then you go to use one later, like then you use one and now you're back to having none. So I think on a subsequent playthrough, I would probably mess with that a little bit more where I would like bank some really wacky evolutions and then get a green crystal and then go to a stage I was struggling with and then power up and like become the altered beast and start munching my way through things I have no business munching my way through because you get all of the stats of that monster, but you keep all of the E.V.O P that you get. So you could go somewhere with super hard enemies, turn into a badass dragon, eat them all and like super fast, accumulate a bunch of E.V.O P, which would make experimentation a lot cheaper and more fun and kind of novel and interesting. But I didn't do any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea in principle for two reasons. One is because, to your point, right, is it's like, what if cavemen but dragons? So,
I see you have a bone club. I have bone claws.
So, both made of bone. This feels like a fair fight. Let's do this. And also too is I think that it's kind of nice because, if you are playing, you could be like, oh, hey man, let me show you this cool thing, and then get a crystal and say, hey, let me show you this cool evolution. Like I made this ridiculous thing. Take a look at it if you did want to share. So I do think it has some advantages, but no, I didn't really grasp that mechanic at all. I just every time I saw a crystal, I ate it, and sometimes some stuff happened. But I mean, like that's kind of good for a replay value,
But totally. And I feel like this game does sort of expect that, right? Like,
well, and
go in, tool around.
that's worth mentioning is that, like this game is from the era where, we had 10 hours to just throw at a video game, So, I mean, like now I don't have that kind of time, but but they had to create games to where you could ostensibly play it and play through it quickly, but then also, you had to make it last a while so you felt you got your fortune's worth, Do you have anything else?
I have two other things I wanted to mention just because I think they are important to understanding everything we have just reviewed about the game, and critically, something we have not touched on at all. So I think you got through like chapter 3?
Yeah, something like that.
And I was able to get to the end of chapter 4. There is a massive tonal shift at the end of chapter 4 that I'm going to go and pursue the rest of the game, even post recording, just because I gotta know. And what I am afraid of, but it can't be helped, is how dramatically might that have affected what we had to say about the game? Because when you start the game, Gaia is like, hey, you're special. I'm going to help you evolve. And first you're going to be a microbe, and hey, now you're a fish, and you're going to be a fish for a while. And then you're going to be an amphibian for a while, and then a dinosaur for a while, and then a bird mammal era for a while, and then humans, right? So there's this clear narrative going on where she is pushing you forward because she likes you, I guess. At the end of chapter 4, you go to a rocky kind of small hill, and you get picked up by a dinosaur, and it like a pterodactyl, and it carries you up to a sky palace that is filled with goblins and eagles that have armor and swords, like metallurgy, right? And so you get through the sky palace, which by the way has teleporters in it. And then when you get to the boss of the sky palace, it is a giant bird, oh god, what are they called? Like the Chozo from friggin' Super Metroid, this huge, stately, upright bird that is wearing clothing and speaks to you about how the stupid animals that are still on land are continuing to evolve their bodies to become stronger, when clearly the future is about evolving your mind to become smarter, and that is how dominance will happen. And they're using the power of the crystals to become smart. All of this happens in this one this one part of chapter 4, just right near the end of chapter 4, and I was just what is happening? I assumed toward the end of the game somewhere you would find Eden, or there would be some kind of allegory about how intelligence is paradise and you've now evolved to the point where you have human level intelligence. Something something like that is what I expected, but that's not what happens. You eventually have to fight this giant alien bacteria thing, and you can become a mermaid, I think, at one point. Dude, I don't know exactly what happens in chapter 5, but narratively, I don't think mechanically anything changes, but narratively it takes this hard right turn.
It gets weird. Sorry, I was kind of just skimming it real fast because we can do research while we're talking. I was skimming it real fast. It's weird, man. I can't. Unfortunately, I can't follow it and also engage with you. And the more important thing is that I'm engaging with you. But yeah, I just pulled it up. I was like, yeah, maybe it's just a quick blurb. It's not. It's long and complicated, and there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So I wanted to say all that just to say, if the gameplay that we have described does or doesn't sound interesting to you, there is quite a narrative going on, but it's front loaded and back loaded, right? There's some stuff at the beginning that explains what you should care about and why. There's a little bit of story throughout that's actually kind of fun and cute and quirky and kind of goes with the cartoony visuals. And then just all of the story happens at the back, right? Literally the end of the 4th chapter and then all throughout the 5th chapter. And then that's the whole game. So, I guess include that in your decision-making process. The one other thing I wanted to shout out, just because I think it's delightful and I really wish more video games would do stuff like this. There are at least 2 fake out endings, and I think there's probably a couple others. When you go see the Tyrannosaurus Rex tribe, I don't know, the area where all the T-Rexes are, the first time you go into that stage, he goes like, "Rar," because they talk sometimes, like some of the animals talk to each other, and he's like, "Rar, you should stop being such a jerk and come be a T-Rex with us, because we're obviously the dominant dinosaur. Do you want to be a dominant dinosaur?" And you can say yes. And if you do, you get a few cutscenes with like little, static pictures and some text that's like, "And you did, and you were super dominant for a long time. Then the asteroids fell, and not so much anymore." And then it just dumps you back to the map, right? So it's like a little fake ending, and it just dumps you back to the map. But it's like, yeah, that is a way your story absolutely could have ended that is in line with the game. You think you have reached the pinnacle of evolution, and it turns out you were wrong, right?
Yep.
And there's another fake ending where, oh God, what is it? It's the bird overlord people. They ask you like, "Do you want to just be a bird overlord and control everything?" And you can say yes. And then what it shows you is, you live up in the Sky Palace as a bird person, and occasionally humans on land have seen you or believed that they saw you. And then it actually shows like a pixel art rendition of like the great eagle in somewhere in the Middle East, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like carved like into the ground.
Yep.
Right. There's a whole Cowboy Bebop episode about those. And the idea is like, that is based on them seeing you because you are this like godly figure to them, right? And same thing, just dumps you back out to the map, like, haha, that could have been how your story ended, right? And I mean, humans, for as nifty as we can occasionally be, we are also not the pinnacle of evolution, but the game has to stop somewhere, right? So like, that's just, where they kind of chose to draw it. But I really wish more games would do stuff like that. Like when the bad guy says like, stop being a good guy, be a bad guy, that saying, yes, I'll join you, just show me a funny little cutscene, give me some funny little dialogue, and then just like record scratch, rewind the tape, and then, we go on. Like, yes, it's video gamey. Yes, it's super meta. Yes, it does disrupt your suspension of disbelief from the experience a little, but I don't care. It's delightful. So please do it more.
Yeah, no, I mean, I also really enjoy that. The two that come to mind are the ones from Portal 2, where like GLaDOS says like, like, "Hey, just come over here, like it's super fun. I've got the cake. It's right here." And if you go in there, you just die.
Yeah.
And then it just dumps you back like 5 seconds earlier. It's like, yeah, you can listen to GLaDOS, or you actually get a trophy for one where when GLaDOS says like, "Oh great, this is the part where he kills you." "All right, this is the part where I kill you." The part where he kills you, and like you get a chance to escape, and he goes like, "Oh no, wait, can you just come back and like jump in the pit? You just come back and kill yourself. I appreciate that. If you do it," he actually goes, "Oh hey, oh no, you did it. Okay, good." And you get like a trophy that says like follows instructions, and that's it. And then just little stuff like that. It's just,
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because it's just and again, like to your point, it just takes so little effort to program that, where it's just like, well, what if they go do this other thing, or also GLaDOS, because they've got a bunch of these. Is at one point Wheatley says, "Hey, I'm gonna go do a thing. I can't do it when you're watching, so you're gonna have to turn around." And if you just sit there staring at him, he's like, "No, I'm serious. I can't do it when you're watching me. You need to turn around." It's like, just it makes you feel like that your choices, quote, matter, even though it's going to force you down the narrative path. But it's like, no, your choices matter. You can make bad choices.
Yeah, it's
the game.
It's more like it's a conversation between the player and the developer. It's like, yeah, we presented you with a choice, and if you choose A or B, something will happen. The B path may be super short, like a super short dead end that immediately kicks you back, and then you have to take the A path. But like the choice actually exists, as opposed to being
it is a choice.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to, what I always hate was when they're like, "Do you want to be a hero and save the day?" And you're like, "No." And they're like, "Come on.
Be a hero.
You want to be a hero and save the day?" "No. Come on."
Yeah.
Because now it's not the hero's choice. It's the hero's like slowly bullied into it.
When you're trapped in that conversation. So it's not like you can even just go back out to the overworld map and be like, "Oh, I'm just going to go wander around until I die."
I really want to, at one point, just queue up a Zelda game, and we're like, "Hey, do you want to be the hero?" And it's like, "No." And then just pause the game, turn it off, and never boot it up again. You know, like just never boot up that save file. Like that save file is just them staring at each other forever because I have agency, damn it.
Stop telling me to do things. Now though, I will tell you that we're going to ask if it held up. Okay. So I gave this game a nostalgia monocle.
Okay.
I gave this game a nostalgia monocle entirely on the back of the grinding problem and the stun locking problem, because I felt like there are charts and graphs and menu options and cool sprite animations and things that were inviting me to experiment. And then the gameplay loop made experimenting less fun, right? The game is super welcoming to a first order optimal strategy of figure out the cheapest evolution you can get to go to where you get a lot of E.V.O points for killing something, kill a lot of things, and then get all the best evolutions and go fight the boss. Like, it's really accommodating to that strategy, but everything about the way characters talk, the way the menus are set up, the way the information that's presented in the manual, it's all like, I don't know, try stuff, right? Oh, because I didn't even say, the manual only gives you letters, but the game gives you numbers. So 2 A's are not necessarily equal. 2 B's are not necessarily equal, right? So the manual doesn't give you all the information. It just gives you a direction, further inspiring you to experiment. It's like, oh, these both have an A, but it has a C and an E. So like, do I want it the A and the E or the A and the C? Maybe this A is so much better that it's worth having the E in the other stat, right? But like, you get stun locked and you lose a bunch of E.V.O points, or you just, kill the same enemies a million billion times while the music runs on a loop. Like, if I'd had a podcast on or an audiobook playing or something, maybe I would have not been that put out by the grinding. But for me, that pushed it into, yeah, I mean, you got to be willing to suffer the grinding. And because bosses can stun lock you, you've got to be willing to suffer that. So if those two things don't bother you, you'll probably enjoy it, and it's quirky and interesting and absolutely worth it. If those two things do bother you, you would probably fall on the other side and say like, no, this is full nostalgia goggle. This is crap, right? I just threaded the needle of like, I see what they were going for and I like it, but I don't love some of these rough edges.
Yeah. And I think that, I've had this discussion a number of times where it's just kind of like, I do not disagree with anything you said. It's just that the things that bothered you just did not bother me as much. And I think, though, that the main reason why they didn't bother me was just because I just happened to be in a place where I could just put my brain in neutral and just play this game, So if this is not a game that is going to require your full attention, So this is a game to have a podcast on in the background. Actually, I think at one point I did just mute it and listen to some other music that I just wanted to listen to, So it's definitely kind of like a passive game, in the sense that you just kind of like you play it. But no, I felt that it was enjoyable. It was weird. It was quirky. It was if you're looking to go back in time and play a game, I think it's worth. It's worth giving it a play. I don't think that it would necessarily be the best game, but I think it finds a little bit of niche. I think it'll survive.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience gained at the end of it all. Gamers play what we play. Game over.
You never actually said the words. You didn't actually rank it.
No nostalgic articles.